This morning is our 11th session and will include an overview of the Parent Information Center and Parent Education Network. We are pleased to have Terry Dawson, Executive Director of Pick and Pen. Thank you for presenting this morning. I will turn it over to Terry to begin today's session.
Good morning. Good morning. I hear an echo. Is there going to be an echo the whole time, or is it just that's the way it goes?
Terry, you may need to turn your computer speakers off.
Okay, I have no idea what that means. So I'll just leave it. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, there's no echo on this end.
Okay, then I won't worry about it. And also yesterday the camera came on and today it didn't. So it's not that it's an issue for me, but I was just surprised it didn't come on. Are you guys seeing me?
Turn her video on.
Yeah. And you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to look at me.
Okay, it's on.
There we are. All right. Yeah, I'd much rather everyone look at the PowerPoint than look at me, but sometimes it's nice to know who's talking to you. So, okay. I welcome everyone. I'm Terry Dawson. I'm the director of the Parent Information Center. And the Parent Information Center, often people refer to us as Pick and Pen. The Parent Education Network was another project we ran for 16 years in Wyoming. We did, as part of that, we ran 7 counties with the Parents as Teachers program. And then that was the larger non-disability related services that we provided information to schools on technical assistance to increase family engagement and work with parent groups in schools, not disability related. And then the Parent Information Center is our advocacy for families of children with disabilities. The Parent Education Network, that funding ended in 2011. So even though we still have a lot of information and handouts and fact sheets on increasing family engagement and parent involvement in schools and parent-teacher conferences, the Project PEN is no longer actively funded and doesn't have any active staff on it. So I saw that on your announcement you had Pick and Pen, just letting you know that today you're going to hear about the Parent Information Center, which is the PIC part of that. You can change the slide. So we're now in our 28th year of individual family service planning and IEP, individualized education planning program support and training. I'm the founder of the organization. I'm the founder of the organization, and this is my son, Ted, on the first day of kindergarten. I founded the organization in 1991 as a result of Ted. He was 5 at the time, and he has Down syndrome. My husband and I and our, at that time, older daughter, she's 3 years older than Ted, lived in Buffalo. We had great support from our early intervention program. And I got involved in the Early Intervention Council, which was just started when Ted was a couple of years old, and found out across the state that families were not getting the support that we got in Buffalo. They didn't know anything about IFSPs, about special ed law, about public health nurses. The public health nurse, Gail Donahue, was the assistant, and the public health nurse, Karen Design, was in Buffalo. I don't know how we would have made it through that first year without their support. With Teddy, ended up at a year old having open heart surgery. We found out at 3 months that he had a hole in his heart, atrial ventricular septal defect, and a year old they did an atrial ventricular canal cross open heart surgery with an incomplete mitral valve. They stitched up the mitral valve, reinforced it, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without that public health nurse and their support with everything. So At that time, I owned a flower shop here in Buffalo and found out about this federal grant that was a statewide parent center that was literally just to help families understand what their rights are and what they could ask for at IEPs and how to work together with the team. And so I wrote the grant, and we've been doing it now since August of 1991. I had no idea what I was doing when I wrote the grant. I just knew that I wanted to support other families, and over the years, we are a nonprofit organization. You can go ahead and change the slide. We have staff across the state. Currently, we have, we just opened a new office in Cheyenne. For those of you in Cheyenne, it's at the Aspen Ridge building, Suite 204 on Dell Range, 2232 Dell Range Boulevard. It's on that lot right, the block right in front of the post office and catty corner from Goodwill. There's a massage parlor next to it anytime we want to just run over and get a massage or get our nails done. But that's where our new office is, and we have Erin Swilling is, she's going to take over as, well, she has taken over as PIC director. So she's directing the project now as of this summer, and I'm still the executive director and will be for the next year and a half until I retire. But so there's that office. She's full-time. She attends IEPs with families. I think some of you might know IEPs and what they are. I didn't do a heavy content on IEPs other than just to it was my understanding you wanted to discuss what IEPs and a public health nurse role is in an IEP. But for those of you who don't know, IEPs are the special ed plan that under IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, there are very specific criteria for what an IEP should include and how that plan should be built and who should be a part of that team and what should be on the IEP. And then there are a lot of procedural safeguards, things like confidentiality, consent, informed consent, getting consent for evaluations, having the right to an independent evaluation. Those are some of the procedural safeguards. And that's what we explain to families when they're confused or in conflict with the school. The book in front of you, Keys, is our little handbook for families. It's very family-friendly language. It defines what IDEA, the special ed law, is. It has a lot of links to federal statutes so people can go and read that if they want to read that. And it also tells, step by step, here is the, here's what you should expect, here's what the evaluation will look like, here's the some of the questions they'll ask you, here's some tips on how to get through that, here's some things that you should ask or find out on your own, here's what the meeting will look like, and when you disagree, here's some of the due process, here's the steps for not agreeing and what you can do as a result of that. The Keys booklet is, we have a gazillion of them, and we can send them out to you so you can put them in your offices. It's also available online as a booklet. It's kind of hard to download as a booklet if you ever want a hard copy, but we have many of those. It's also available online in Spanish, and we have hard copies in Spanish as well. The little baby steps there, the little boy on the front is a little, he's now, oh gosh, I want to say he must be close to in the 5th grade. He's a little munchkin from Cheyenne. We always try in all of our booklets and our materials, we try to use local Wyoming families. And we have a lot of sweet, sweet children around the state that we get to put their pictures on our material. But the Baby Steps booklet is for the part C, which is the birth through 2 up until age 3. So that would be the regional child development centers that we have. We have 14 of them across the state. I'm guessing each of you know your players and your regional child development center in your area. The Baby Step talks about, again, what that looks for an infant toddler program, what to expect, kind of walks through some of the stages of grief. We have a developmental chart in there so that family can know if they're concerned about their children's developmental stages. They can look at that chart and say, should I be concerned? And if I am concerned, who do I go to for a screening? And what does a screening mean? And what does the next step of evaluation look like? And then what should I expect? So that's the baby steps. It's also on our website as a downloadable book. And in Spanish as well. Excuse me, just 1 minute, I'm gonna holler. Juanita, could you bring me the early on, a copy of each of the early on? And I'll show them on the webinar. I'll hold them up so you guys can see another, and some disability brochures too, please. Disability brochures, grab a couple of those. I apologize, I should have had this in front. But other resources, and these might, thank you. These might be helpful. I know that oftentimes you get families in and they don't know next step, just maybe an IEP one or prior written notice or autism, a couple. Here they think you can see them, but it's the series, and we have a series of 5 of those, and one's on the birth through to series on IFSPs, which is the individual family service plan, which for children under 3, it's not just about the individual child, it's about the family and addressing those needs and supporting those needs, which is why it's not an IEP, which is the individualized education program, but the family plan. And excuse me, in the statute, public health nurses on the interagency councils or local interagency groups and within IFSP, oftentimes public health nurses are suggested members of an IFSP team for an infant and or toddler as they're going through the process at the Child Development Center. But we also have one in this same series that's called The Difference Between Part C and Part B, which that would be the birth through 3, and then the 3 to 21, which is what IDEA specifically talks about in terms of IEPs. Another is natural environment. Natural environment is wherever a student or a baby, infant, toddler, up until 3 would be served if you didn't have a disability. So it might be the child care center, it might be home, it might be grandma's, might be another setting. So the natural environment would be where services would be provided. So the Child Development Center would go to that place, and so we have a little smaller handbook on that topic. And then the rights and protections, which are the procedural safeguards under Part C. There's some differences between C and B, C being the infant toddler program and Part B of the IDEA being the 3 to 21, so school age. And then the transition from preschool to kindergarten is our 5th of this series. These are easy to print out if you need them, or just call us and we'll get you as many copies as you want. Or you can always refer. They're also online. These are not in Spanish, but we've literally taken the baby steps and just chunked it up. So everything that's in baby steps, we just kind of made in smaller little units. So the same information is available in Spanish in the baby steps book. You can go ahead and change the slide. As I was saying, we have, so Erin's in our Cheyenne office. We've just hired this summer a new full-time, very excited about this, outreach in Casper. Her name is Nikki Sweets. Her information and phone number is listed on our contact us on our webpage. She is the parent of a teenage son with autism, and because we are Parents Helping Parents of Wyoming, our whole premise is that we're kind of parents that have been there, done that. We know what it feels like, and then we're explaining the process to families. So there's great teachers and providers out there who are not parents of children with disabilities, and in the past we have hired some of them as family members or special ed professionals, but we really try to hire all of our staff as parents who have been there, done that. So Nikki is in Casper, Erin Swilling is in Cheyenne as the new picked project director. We have Jennifer Petrie, who's down in the Green River area. Jennifer's worked for us over the years on and off for about 7 years, and works for us for 10, 20 hours a month. Right now, she came back to us. She's working full-time as the disability support service person at Western Wyoming College. So she supports families on the side for the Parent Information Center. Jennifer Petrie. And then we have Juanita Bybee is here in the Buffalo office, even though we have opened an office in Cheyenne, and we'll gradually transition that down to be the central office for the next year, year and a half. We'll still have this office up in Buffalo. We're shifting our lending library and a lot of our materials down to that office as opposed to having it up here. The lending library is another one of our resources. As we were moving yesterday Tuesday in the big trailer, as we're hauling stuff down, we have about 3,000 books on disability, and mostly disability, but family engagement in schools and child development books available for loan. Anyone can check them out. All they have to do is call us. We're working on getting an online listing of that. That's a little more complicated than we anticipated in the last couple of years with minimal staff to put that together. But we thought with more people down in Cheyenne, we would have more access to coming in and just checking out a book. All they have to do is ask for a title or ISBN number, and we'll see if we have it. And then we send it out, and the only cost to families or anyone is the postage to send it back to us. And we ask that they send it back in 2 to 3 weeks. And then we start hounding them to get it back. Families are pretty good about it. Oftentimes they'll send it around to a friend or a family or a provider, and then we get it back after a couple of months. But we try to get it back after 2 to 3 weeks. So that is a resource for you to give to families. Another thing that I think all of you, and I would hope if you maybe email me after, if you're not getting our e-newsletter, we have put all of the public health nurses on, whether we have your individual name or just, I can't remember what it was, but PHP Johnson or at wyo.gov, whatever that your online email is for your county, whatever that format was, we put everyone on. But for a long time we knew all the names, and we tried to keep that updated. So if you're not getting it, please holler and we'll send it, and then you can forward it out to families that are interested. This is one of our e-newsletters, and we send it out every month. I try to get it out by the second week. And it's mostly it's just these little links, and it goes to stuff that I think is interesting, or stuff that like the behavioral health division sends us stuff on the waiver, or we get stuff on Kids Care Chip, or whatever we think is interesting, conferences, trainings, and then we pretty much always try to put a tip or some sort of an article about strategies about disabilities, either it be autism or executive function, what that means, how to help your kid, or how to help your kid in school, or something revolving around behavior. We always try to put some sort of a link to that type of a tip or an article. Here's some of the disability brochures that we also have available online. And we print out a gazillion of these as well, and these are all available in Spanish. So we have this one's on IEPs, prior written notice, which is one of the procedural safeguards, autism. We have 31 or 32 of these different, so they're mostly around disability topics, positive behavior interventions, Section 504. So that's another service that we provide. You can change the slide, please. Yep. So some of the other thing that we do in terms of supporting and providing information to families, the majority of our time is spent one-on-one with families over the phone, walking them through. Typically when they call us because there's a conflict. They're having a conflict, or they're upset about something, or their kid has been constantly being referred or suspended, may or may not be on an IEP, but but something's going on with their kid. He's failing math, he's flunking, he can't read. So then we kind of do a drill down and walk them through some of the questions of, tell me a little bit more about this, and where are you, what's his age, what's going on. And as I'm sure all of you know, with the families that you work with, sometimes the things that they come in about or call you about is really not the issue. And so we kind of have to drill down to that. And so that one-on-one, and then if they have a problem, we always want them, first thing to do is have you talk to the teacher, have you talk to the school, typically anymore. The answer is no. So we say, you need to do that first, and here's kind of the process, and here's who you should talk to, and we'll help them, we'll role play with them or help them know what questions to ask, or define it a little bit further so they can ask something. Families don't know what to say. They don't know what to ask always, so we help them with that. But it takes quite a bit of time to drill down to exactly what it is that they want and need, and or if it's even a idea, a special ed issue, or if it's a personnel issue, or if it's they're just mad at the world issue. And we can't fix all of that, but we help support them at every level, and then start a problem solving, what's the next step. That really is what takes the majority of our time. And then we always send them some type of information and send them out the keys booklet, either online or through the mail, a hard copy. But other components of the support that we provide are workshops and trainings, kind of like this, webinars, or we go out and hit the road, and we go to a lot of conferences and do trainings as either in-services and professional development. We do it as childcare, we do it to school districts as either paraeducator training, or to special ed or regular ed staff. We do a lot of in-services, but we really like to go and do it open to the public and get families there. And so here's some of the list of some of the workshops that we do. The ones that autism used to be a really popular one. We don't do that as much anymore. There's just a lot of information out there on autism, but not so much about, even if there is a lot of information about IDEA and IEPs, it really takes some explaining to do. So we do a lot of workshops on IEPs and different components of IEPs, but that's kind of the list of our workshops. Anymore, the majority of our calls, I would say probably 90% of our calls anymore are revolve around behavior, and the kid that's his behavior is getting in the way of his learning, and whether he's on an IEP or not, behavior is getting in the way, and he's either being referred to the office or suspended or restrained or secluded. We're seeing a lot of that, but it's around behavior, and then we walk them through next steps and how to ask for a behavior plan, or those sort of steps. So behavior and IEPs are probably the workshops that we do the most on, but they're available at no cost, and we'll do them anywhere across the state. Families or schools or providers just call and ask us. And then if we get an area, either a district or an area of the state that we're just getting a lot of calls around a particular issue, we'll go and set up a workshop in that area. We do, on an annual basis, we do annual disability parent conferences. Last year in March, actually it was a year ago in March, we had one in Gillette. We for years did them in Casper, and now we're trying to go to the different corners of the state. So this year the next one is going to be in Cheyenne, February 23rd and 24th at the Red Lion Inn. Used to be the old Holiday Inn on out on South Greeley Highway, but it's the Red Lion Inn. It's changed. And we don't have a lineup of speakers yet, but it will revolve around behaviors and IEPs. So that will be the topics and the main focus of that workshop, parent conference. Next slide. So for those of you who you can either call me and we'll stick you on our e-newsletter list, or you can go online and sign up at wpic.org. Like I said, the Parent Education Network project is no longer staffed, but we we've kept the website there because we still have a lot of good resources on it. And you can just go to publications and download any of those fact sheets. None of our information is copyrighted. We do that for a purpose because we know that as providers and teachers, you don't have the time to develop material. And so if you need to use it or cut it for a newsletter that you're doing, cut and paste, that's what it's there for. Or you just want to print it out and send it out. This particular picture is of Ted. That was his kindergarten. He was always included in the regular classroom. Some days were better than others, but he did end up graduating from high school with a diploma and mastered the proficiencies in 2006. It was a very long 12 years, but I believe in inclusive classrooms, and we think that he got a really good education as a result of that. But it's up to the individual family and individual child's needs as to whether or not, what that placement looks like and how included a child is. And that's the other thing that we help families help so their decision, but we can help them understand how they can ask for more time in the regular classroom within the IEP, because that's an IEP team decision. But that was a Thanksgiving program that Ted was at. So there's our websites. Go ahead and change the slide. So some of the issues that we see the most with families, number one, I already mentioned it, when their child are not on track for development or failing in school, they're very, very defensive. And I would assume, rightfully or not, that oftentimes when they come to a public health nurse, they're scared about something's going on, and oftentimes our fear or anger gets in the way, and then we become very defensive, and we have to fight some of that defensiveness and move beyond that to help support and then move them to the next step, because even though we are about support, we are about providing information. And so when they come to you and they don't know about an IEP, you might be working with them for another reason, but we would hope that you would suggest, here's the IEP, how's that going? How's it going in school? Especially a child with a significant enough health issue that it is getting in the way of their learning. And you could help them break down those barriers of defensiveness, and so that they can then see to make a change or see to be a good partner on the team, because that defensiveness, when they're feeling intimidated or scared or angry, it doesn't make for a good partnership. And so we see that as definitely our role, but absolutely as you guys' role too in supporting them. And I know that's what you do, because that's what our public health nurse did for us all those years ago. And you know what, families, they don't know what they don't know. And it's really easy to say, well, they're not doing blah, 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 blah. Well, if they don't know that that's what they're supposed to be doing, they can't do it. And so that's what we either help them understand that they can do whatever it is, or we send them to another resource, like either public health nurse or a child development center, or the waiver services to sign up for that, or whatever it might be. But they don't know, so we support them and then send them to resources. And so we're hoping that if by having this presentation today, that you'll know that if and when you see a family whose kid is failing for whatever reason, and they're upset about whatever's going on at school, you can refer to us, and you can be that very first piece of support by giving them our information. But then you'll have a greater understanding of an IEP and maybe some procedural safeguards with some of our information. The other thing that's very scary for families is the system is scary. It's complicated. The process is, even teachers, we're always so amazed that teachers, regular ed teachers or special ed teachers, it's one thing when you're supporting another family, but when it's you, and you might be a teacher or a special ed teacher, but you get into that, then all of a sudden you lose all understanding. What you might have known to refer to another family goes right out the window when it's your own child, and you just, so we, and for those teachers who don't have a child with a disability, we're always surprised that they don't know more about the process of special ed. it's just one of those things that they refer out to and send someone to, and they're not, they're busy teaching and not always paying attention to the system or the process and the steps of that process. I'm going to check right here. It looks like there's some, okay. I thought maybe there were some questions in the chat box. I'll try to pay attention to that chat box if you have a question. Feel free to do that. Is that okay, Paula?
Sure.
Okay. I just saw that there were some things there. Okay, next slide. But I really think the lack of training and understanding the process really gets in the way of families knowing what to do next. It's intimidating. They don't know. They don't know. And so we, if you guys can learn a little bit more about it to support them through it and know some of the steps, it would be helpful. The other thing is that, like I said, 90% of our calls is building intervention plans, building intervention, no data. Mostly what we're seeing, they'll call them contingency plans. School will call them contingency plans or consequences. Well, they need to be positive. They need to be, many times a lot of the behavior that we're seeing in schools, that families are seeing in schools, is because the kids don't know how to behave well. They don't know what behavior looks like, or they don't have the skill to do whatever it is that they're not doing. And so then they act out, or people will say, well, it's a behavior. Well, what does that mean? I mean, me sitting here is a behavior. Me waving my hands is a behavior. Is it good behavior? Well, it's just behavior. So until we know what that looks like and break that down and say to families, don't just say it's bad behavior, tell me what it is, and then how are we going to fix it? And schools don't always define that well, and families that are coming to us, they've not built a plan. And when they build a plan, it's kind of just made up. It's kind of random. So we say, no, behavior plans have to be built on data, and the data might be not just how many times this child kicked the student next to him when he got to reading centers. It's what was he doing before he kicked. Was he kicking because you were making him read? You're going around the circle, and then it was his turn to read, and so rather than read because he can't read, he kicks the little kid, and then he gets in trouble, and then he doesn't have to read. And so every single time it comes to him, he's going to kick the kid. And so kicking isn't what we want to know. It's what happened, what triggered it, what's the kicking. And so we explain that to families. And yeah, data is important, and families hear the word data and they're like, I don't have any data. I'm not a researcher. No. Data is anything you bring to the table, anything you're seeing at home, and then ask the question of what data do you have as you're building this plan? Okay, next. That's Ted, and he was in the 8th grade. On that slide, you can change that slide though, but that was him. He was actively engaged in all sports. He played wrestled and played football, both in middle school and then in high school. By the time he got to high school, he was slow, really strong as a rock, really, but he couldn't move very quickly, but he loved the uniform. And so of course, they'd be starting wrestling and he'd be strutting around the mat like woo-hoo. And then by the time the younger kids couldn't, they're just learning how to do it as a middle schooler. But by the time they got to high school, these boys, they knew what was going on. And Ted was still out there posing, and slam, he would get pinned right away. And he'd look at the student like, what did you do that for? He had the strength. He just didn't have the speed to get those kids. So he stopped wrestling in high school and started swimming and was very successful at that. But he loved a good uniform, and he loved being a part of the social group and part of a team. So in regards to an IEP, that's another thing. It's just not academic. It's social and functional skills and behavior. And those are 3 things that families or schools will say, no, your kid's doing fine. He's getting good grades. He or she's getting good grades. Yet he's being referred, or has no friends and is always, in someone's face, and has no social skills. And social emotional is a part of the IEP. So even if a student is getting good grades, just the academic is not enough to keep a child from getting supports if he's not getting bad grades. There's other things that go along with that. And so schools often will say, we don't have to evaluate because he's getting good grades. And we will say, and we hope that you will say to families, no, if there's something going on with your kid and it's a social emotional issue or a behavior issue, you can get an evaluation through the school district. You don't have to go out and pay for it yourself. It's under child find responsibilities under the idea. It is the school's responsibility to do that evaluation, not just around academic. So finally, we've gotten to the school health plan that in regards to public health and health plans. Health plans, oftentimes a kid maybe might have diabetes, might have attention deficit, might have asthma, anymore. I mean, it just seems like our students are coming to school, our children are coming to school with more significant health issues than 28 years ago when we started. And many times the school nurse, she might have 3 schools. She might be in one school on Tuesdays, one school on Wednesdays, and one school on Thursdays. And she's only part-time and she has 3 schools and a very huge load. And so she's stretched pretty thin. And so for an IEP team, a public health nurse, if you're involved with a family, it's absolutely appropriate that a public health nurse show up as support and a member of the IEP team. If a family invites you, the school can't say, no, you can't be there. The family can invite who they want. We always suggest that when, and if you have a close relationship or you feel like you need to be at the IEP with the family and they've invited you and, they don't give you enough notice of the time of the meeting, you can request. We wouldn't do it on the day. We would do it as soon as you get the notice of the meeting, but change the meeting, ask to reschedule it at a time that's convenient for you. Because families, if they want public health nurse or anyone at the IEP meeting, absolutely, you guys can come and a school can't deny your participation. Then as a result of you having been there, you are now a member of the IEP team and should get copies of the paperwork. The confidentiality lies in the parents and the student if they're over 18. So if families invited you and you want a copy of it and you call later and ask for a copy of it, they should, you're already a member of the team. Now, many times schools will say, oh, that's confidential. You can't get that because the parent, has to sign off. It's like, well, I was at the meeting, so they obviously did sign off for me to get, I was there, they invited me there. But you might have to get a confidentiality release and have parents say, yes, you can get this copy. But while you're at the meeting and in regards to any of the information regarding that, if you go to the IEP meeting, you're part of the IEP team. And again, the confidentiality lies with the family. And if they invited you and want you to get that, you should be getting it from the school. So now we come to a health plan. And many times, it might just be, the health plan might just be in regards to the logistics of attention deficit medicine or, something like that, Ritalin or whatever it might be. And so that may or may not be, that could be an informal health plan or just, typically schools have some sort of a chart of what it is. It has to come to school in a prescription bottle. They have some of those rules. But for a kid who's got maybe asthma and has an inhaler or diabetes and might need insulin or peanut allergies, those are becoming, allergies are becoming a pretty big deal and needs an EpiPen. Well, the plan, and this might be something that for a school that might not have a full-time nurse, and typically no schools have a full-time nurse, you might help write that plan with family to say what would be appropriate, what's the time, what does it look like. It's not really about the format, it's about having something written, structured, that they can take in. The other thing about it is health plans, there's been a state complaint in the last couple of years, and a decision was made that the school was in violation of it because they had a health plan. They didn't annually update the health plan. It was a kid that had some significant health needs, and they didn't put the health plan into the IEP. So everything that was done and given and said that was a part of the health plan didn't get incorporated into the IEP, so it was never updated, and the goals weren't met. No one paid attention to it. It wasn't, they didn't have anything measurable, and no one was paying attention. And so the complaint said, you know what, it needs to be put into the IEP. If you've got health issues that are significant to write a plan, you need to put it into the IEP. And for those of you who are interested in that complaint, we have a redacted complaint that we can send out to you, so you might see that, because it's, it's telling that obviously it's a decision, a legal decision the state has made around that. But the thing is can't always blame health nurses, because they're doing their job and often are school nurses, and they have protocol, and there's not always a lot of guidance, and they're often left alone because principals don't know anything about health often, and so they just kind of leave them alone, and then they don't feel like they know what to do or shouldn't do it. So I feel like if public health nurses can help explain that to the families and help walk them through what might be relative and meaningful in the plan concerning the health. So, some of those are the logistics. Who's going to do what? When if it's a sub and that kid, the peanut allergy or has an asthma attack, who's going to give the inhaler, or who's going to give the EpiPen, and when that person's gone, who's the second in command, and help define that for families, because families oftentimes when they come in and it's especially something critical like that, they're upset, they're angry. School plan doesn't always get written until there's some sort of a crisis, and then then everyone's family's upset, and so that can be one of the roles that you guys play in supporting the family through that. Excuse me. And in regards to and then there's the 504 for a student who might have a health need but doesn't reach the level of or degree of being found eligible for and needing specialized instruction, which is what special ed is for, but they still have health issues that they might need an accommodation for. Same thing. If it's affecting their learning, the health issue is, then they need some sort of a defined plan, whether it be the IEP or a health plan. And that's kind of where I see you guys' role. Paula, is there any way you guys can unmute, or I'm just feeling like, I don't know if you guys have questions about that and want to wait till the end.
I see no questions coming up on the chat.
Okay.
Typically, we wait till the end and.
Okay. I just feel like I'm talking. It's hard when you don't. I'm used to seeing people out there.
We're here, Terry.
With no feedback, I agree.
Yeah. I'm looking at a picture of my son. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty cute, but, or yeah, who wants to look at themselves talking? All right, go ahead. Next slide. So, and again, not only is our children's, their behavior is communication, and since 90% of our calls are around behavior and defining that behavior and building a plan or figuring out what the trigger is and working with that for kids so that they can have access to their family's behavior is also comes out sometimes poorly because they don't feel like anyone is listening. And so I feel that, absolutely it's our role at the Parent Information Center to support them and help advocate for them. But it's also, I think it's you guys' role as well as support for public health nurses. I remember when Ted was first diagnosed, and not only were Gail and Karen at the public health nurse office, they were friends, but I don't, honestly, I mean, I whined and moaned and cried, and then we had to go through the whole, heart surgery thing, and I didn't understand it, and they explained it to me, and I mean, they were my lifesavers. And so I having someone like that to go to, and I'm sure they just thought, oh, please don't come in and cry over the same exact thing again and again and again, because I did, and I just that was my way of getting through it, and and they just listened and supported and supported and supported again and again and again. And then I could finally process it and move on. But sometimes families just, they don't have anyone to talk to like that, and they don't have anyone that they don't feel like the school is listening, so they get louder and angrier. And so at any point, they can just feel like someone's listening. Even if we're not doing anything, sometimes we just have to listen. And then it makes that IUP team meeting and so much more productive when they feel like someone's listening, either before or at the meeting. Most of it happens outside of the meeting, but certainly at the meeting. Next slide. This was just this is Erin's children. She is down at Erin Swilling down in Cheyenne. She has twins. One of them had some speech language and learning disability, and she was an educator. And she has a early childhood educator, and she tells a story about she was just devastated that here she knew all this child growth and development, and still just it was very, very hard for her to take her to go into that first meeting and say, not my kid. He's doing very well. He's been off of an IEP since he got into school, but it's our babies. It's our greatest gift. And when something isn't going right with them, we just always have to remember that this sweet picture is always the picture that families have in their mind of their children. They're not always seeing all the screaming or the hollering or the whatever's going on at school and the crying because they can't get their homework done. This is the sweet picture of our babies that we have in our mind. So I just put it in there because I want to remind it that all of us as parents think our children are pretty wonderful. And even on the bad days, this is the picture that we have of our children in our mind. Next slide. So, we tell families, just like Dorothy, they have the power. As Glinda and the Wizard of Oz told families, you've always had the power, my dear, you just had to learn it for yourself. And families have to be empowered to understand what they can ask for, how they can ask for it. We can help them with that, but they have to take it on at some point. One of the things that we do not do here at the Parent Information Center is we do not do it for them. Families oftentimes want to give us the paperwork, they want to give us the IEP, they want us to go through it, and then once they've handed that to us and we're starting to look at maybe suggestions for change, then they're done. Because they gave it to us and we're going to fix it. And we say, why don't you get out your IEP and read to me what that first goal is over the phone? Because we want them, okay, you can't find it. All right, well, there it should be on maybe page 3. Look in the middle of the page. It should look like this. What about the accommodation? So we kind of walk them through it, even if we're over the phone or if they come into the office, because we want them to know what it is. We don't want to make the call for Keep Care Chip or for the waiver to say, we have a family, can you call them? We want them to make the call and reach out and find that resource on their own, because it's not helpful if we're doing it for them. We want to support them in doing it for themselves and empower them. And they have the power. Sometimes they don't have the knowledge or the skills or the confidence to do it themselves, but we can help them with that. They have to do it themselves. We want to empower them to do it. Next slide. So we always tell them, you know what, if you feel like if it's not going well, trust your gut. Fight it. It works better if you go in with honey instead of vinegar. Be nice to your team. Be nice to people when you ask. But that doesn't always happen because families by then are scared or angry. Gather your data. You guys can help families gather the data, whether it be records, health records, or weight and developmental charts. They don't always know how to put that together, but they have to do it. You can't walk in with an empty hand. You gotta, if you want to make a change with something, you've got to have something in your hand to say, this is where we're at, and this is what we want to see a change with. Which is why the IEP is built around present levels of performance, which at some level you have to start from there. It's the baseline, and then you take it. The IEP team then moves on to the goal and builds a goal around the present level of need, of present level of functioning. And families need to build the case for their child's need. So whatever that data says, or if they consistently see Just talked to a family yesterday, and our kid does really well in a structured classroom. And so he had extended school year and was kicked out of 2 or 3 programs over the summer, and the school kept saying, but he's fine at school. Well, yeah, he's in a classroom with 5 other kids. It's very structured. They know him. They know when he starts escalating. But the problem is we're not teaching him social emotional skills and just that how to interact with kids, because when he gets out in public in these group settings, he's blowing up, and then they kick him out of the summer school program. It's like there's a problem with that. So we need to build the case for the child's need and define that better, and we need to help families do that. And so yesterday we just said, well, where are the places that he's blowing up at, and what did that look like? And so go back to the school, at the beginning of the school year, and write a goal around, how to interact, how to have that space between people, how to have, all of those social, emotional needs and social skills. And then the other thing we say, the funding's cut. Teachers don't go into teaching because they hate children. Teachers go in because they want to make a difference, and a positive difference. And sometimes the system gets in the way of things happening. So even though we're going to continue to support families and help them push to get what their kids need, according to the kids' need, not what mom wants, because those things have to match. It's a system, and systems move slowly sometimes, and there's going to be problems. And so, try to work that out, be reasonable. You can't scream, or you can't scream and say, I want it done now. It might take a couple of days, or they might have to, get their own data to make something happen. And so we try to tell the families, you got to give it some time and keep following up with that. Be very, very clear what it is that you want, but then give it time for whomever you're asking to make a change to make the change. Next slide. And we always teach families to understand what rights they have under IDEA. They don't have to know the whole law, but they need to know some very basic things of what to expect. And if they don't know it, they need to know where to look it up. And you guys can support families in always doing this. Understand what you're asking for, and the chain of command. Oh my gosh, the chain of command, if it's a process again. And so if you go to your next door neighbor who's on the school board and you complain about your kindergarten teacher, you've just blown that relationship with your kindergarten teacher, unless you've talked to her first and then gone to her supervisor or the special ed director and principal, and then up to the superintendent and then to the school board, because you got to go to the chain of command and let that person in line at the bottom rung fix it first. You have to give them the opportunity to fix it. Families, especially young families today, they don't have those skills. They don't understand the chain of command and social media and blasting your problem on Facebook or Instagram or Snap. It's become difficult to explain them. You need to talk to this person, and then you need to talk to the next person. And so at every level, if you guys could support families in taking those steps, oh man, the chain of command is pretty critical. Emails and text should not be the only form of communication. We always say go in, make an appointment, talk to them. You don't get the nuance in a text or an email. And many times people don't have time to put all the details in an email. So go in, talk to them, call them on the phone, go in. And save all of your paperwork. Even if you're never going to look at it, save it, put it in one pile. Then when you need it, we can go through it and look through it. But those are things that are pretty critical for an IEP or at any level for our kids. And that with your health records of having families keep those in a place that they can access, even if it's not in order. Just keep it in one place. Next slide. And many times families, we're told right up front, you know what, your kid's never going to be able to do that. He's never going to be able to do this. And we need to allow them to dream and give them permission, because we don't know what kids are going to do. Our kids, if we expect them to do something, by golly, they're going to meet that expectation. And if we don't expect them to do it, by golly, they're going to meet that expectation too and not do it. So we need to allow families, and I know you guys every day, work with miracles in terms of health, and you never know what's going to happen. So, we always have to continue to have hope and dream and expect the best. Next slide. There's Erin and her son again. There's my email and the Buffalo office's phone number and Erin's name and email and the Cheyenne offices. We're always going to refer if, for instance, you're in Casper or in Green River, or whatever area of the state, we're going to refer you to whomever is covering that. On a statewide level, it will be Juanita and I out of this office, and then Erin is covering the Cheyenne and the southeast area. And then if it's an area where no one is, one of Juanita and I in this office will pick up the rest of the state. So I'm 3 minutes shy. Sorry, I tried to talk fast and get through it. Any discussion though? Questions around IEPs or what you think you can or cannot do?
We don't see anything in the chat box. Does anybody have?
Nothing in the chat box.
No.
Okay. I'm
Everything good.
Very, what's that say? Very informative. Thank you. It was.
Well, I didn't get down into the down and dirty for the IEPs, but I didn't know how much of that you wanted. Really, I think if you were going to take anything away is number one, if you're helping to build a health plan for school with a family, please attend the IEP or support them in getting that into the IEP. A health plan needs to be defined logistically and it needs to be in the IEP so that it's reviewed annually and updated. And if there's a goal around the health needs, it needs to be in the IEP. Don't keep those health plans separate. And I'm happy to, maybe Paula, I can even send you that complaint, that redacted complaint, and you can get it out to everyone.
Sure, I'd be happy to look at it.
Or, I don't know if people are interested in that, but.
We could definitely put it out on the PHN intranet site with this.
Okay. It's redacted, so I think it's relevant information in terms of a health plan for a student and where that decision landed legally.
Terry, this is Danielle Marks, and I just think in light of the fact that we don't have questions, I just want to reiterate to folks that the purpose of these trainings is just to be able to know who to contact when you do have questions. So I think you just did a really comprehensive job, and I think now folks know who to contact when they have questions. So thank you. We do have one more
No, what is that?
question.
I am breaking down a file for Tony, and the information is from 2011 to 2012. Is it just a manual, no client info? May I throw this away? So this is a general question. They must have something old.
So if it, in terms of confidentiality, in terms of, if it doesn't have any identifiable information, it's fine. She can hear me right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no identifiable, because it doesn't matter if it's about a disability or anything. If it's no identifiable information, then it's absolutely fine. There's no confidentiality in a problem for a student, as long as, you might even want to just tear and rip up the name if there's, any kind of identifying. But, schools are public, so if it has the school's name or the teacher's name, that's not an issue either because they're public. But really, it's just the client information. If it defines it well enough, that if, for instance, if the information said this is a 13-year-old boy, in 2005, 13-year-old boy with Down syndrome in Buffalo, well, everyone's going to know who that kid is. There's only one kid in Buffalo with Down syndrome. So if it had anything that was identifiable at any point, but if it's just a regular manual, I don't think there's any issue with throwing it away. Unless you guys have different protocol, and I would follow your protocol.
Yeah, I think I would just defer to Karen Meyer or Candace Fruit in terms of, charting if that's part of this question. But I think that if there's no identifiable information, it's an old document, you're likely okay to discard.
And it's funny because I just went through, moved 9 bookcases and a 6-piece desk set and, you know, oh my God, a huge legal file case, and I was purging the heck. We ended up at Christmas, I think, having 30 boxes shredded of, yeah. So I just went through all that, and you look through everything. It's like, can I just throw this away? And, you know, in my mind, if I'm not sure, I'm going to shred it instead of throwing it away. But if it's just information, I throw it away.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it doesn't look like there's any other questions. So the slides and documents from today's presentation are on the PHN intranet. The recording will be added to Y-Train in about a week. Our next session is Thursday, August 23rd, with a presentation about Medicaid's dental health coverage. Thank you to today's presenter and for your attendance. This concludes today's session. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
So much, Terry. We appreciate your help.
Sure thing. Bye-bye.